Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. For today's card, I started with a piece of Bristol smooth paper and I taped it down to my board so that it wouldn't move around while I do some Distress Oxide ink blending. The color that I'm going to be using is Spun Sugar, and I'm using this cloud stencil from My Favorite Things. This is a really great stencil to have because it has the cloud design on all four sides, so you can rotate it and get different looking clouds every time. You can also flip the stencil over, which mirrors all of those cloud designs so that you have even more variety. Another thing that you can do with this stencil is flip the design over and use blue or green colors, and then it looks like waves. So yeah, I think it's a really great stencil to have. You can really get so much use out of it. Okay, so once the ink blending was done on that panel, I trimmed it a little bit because I wanted it to be slightly smaller than an A2 size card base. I'm going to be using my fuse tool in order to turn this panel into a little shaker pocket. The plastic that I'm using here is a piece of a 12 by 12 scrapbooking sleeve. It's a pretty thick plastic sleeve, and I think it works really well with the fuse tool. Now, it's been a long time since I purchased this scrapbooking sleeve, but if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure I bought it at Michael's, and I think it's from Project Life. Whenever you use your fuse tool, you want to give it a good amount of time to heat up before you start, and you also want to be really careful that you don't touch that end because it's very hot. I fused together 3 of the sides, leaving the top open so that I could put some sequins in. I used a paper trimmer in order to cut off all of the excess plastic around the edges. The sequin mix that I'm using for this pocket is called Heaven Sent, and it's by Lucy's Cards. Once I had a good amount of sequins in there, I used my fuse tool again in order to close up that pocket. The stamp set that I used for today's card is called Rainbows and Unicorns, and it's from My Favorite Things. I took the unicorn and the rainbow images from that stamp set, and I stamped them with my MISTI tool onto some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock, and I stamped those with Gina K Designs Amalgam ink. This ink is a Copic friendly ink, and I'm going to be coloring in these images using my Copic markers. I'm going to do some really simple coloring, not a lot of blending going on. At most, I used 2 colors in a couple of the areas. Since the rainbow image only has 3 stripes, I decided to kind of blend together some of the rainbow colors. For the first stripe, I used 2 pink markers, but for the second stripe, I decided to start with a yellow marker and then add some orange and blend them together. I did the same thing for the third stripe, but this time I did it with a blue marker and a purple marker. For the 2 clouds, I wanted to create a color cast from the sky that I created earlier. So I blended that sky using Spun Sugar Distress Oxide ink. So I picked out a Copic marker that I think is very close in color to that Spun Sugar. I used that color along the bottom edge of the 2 clouds, and then I used a colorless blender in order to fade out the top edge of that coloring. I wanted my unicorn to have a rainbow mane and tail, so I colored in each section of the hair with different colors of the rainbow. These areas are kind of small, and I wanted to keep my coloring pretty simple, so I only used 1 marker in each of those areas, and I didn't do any kind of blending. I used those same exact colors in order to color in the spots that are on the unicorn's flank. And I do have all of those marker caps off to the side so that you can see the colors that I used. I used the Y13 marker to color in the horn on the unicorn, and then I used my N8 marker to color in the hooves. I wanted to leave the rest of the unicorn white, but I did want to add some shading, so for the shading I used the color N0. For my sentiment, I cut a strip of cotton candy cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and I prepped it with a powder tool to do some embossing. I stamped one of the sentiments from the stamp set with Versamark ink, and then I embossed it with Alabaster white embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. Next, I took the shaker pocket that I created earlier, and I adhered it onto an A2 size card base using my ATG gun. I took my sentiment strip and I cut it down to be the same size as my card base, and then I adhered it along the bottom edge of the card. I left a little space next to the sentiment, and that's where I glued the rainbow. I die cut 3 clouds out of vellum using Hero Art's Nested Cloud die set, and then I placed them on top of my card and I didn't adhere them down. I used a combination of my ATG gun and my Gina K Connect glue in order to adhere my unicorn, and when I place that unicorn down on top of those 3 clouds, it's going to secure them as well. I used a white gel pen in order to add some highlights to the unicorn, the rainbow, and the 3 vellum clouds. To finish up the card, I took my Wink of Stella glitter brush and I went over the 3 vellum clouds, and then I also went over the 2 clouds that are on the rainbow. Here's a closer look at the finished card. You can see all of that gorgeous sparkle on those clouds and those beautiful sequins that are in the shaker pocket. Thank you for watching today. I hope you really enjoyed this card design using some products from My Favorite Things. All of the supplies that I used for today's card design can be found in the description down below. If you're brand new to my channel and you enjoyed watching today, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button so that you can see all of my future videos. I'm going to be back with a new video on Monday. Again, thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a good day today.